Ledge here in Michigan, which is a little community just west of Lansing. It's about 8,000 people. I'm not sure how big Linden is. Seems a little smaller than that, but not much. We've got about, well, let's see, what was the last count? 6,521 voters. And we have an election this May, so.
That's us too.
Yeah, that'll be
Oh,
fun.
we have one in May?
Yeah, our fire authority wants to pass a millage, so we'll have 3 this year. I think that'll be 56 for me, 56 elections with these 3 this year. Yeah. So I've been a city clerk in the city of, in the state of Michigan for 31 years. I've been with the city for 26 years now. So it's been a while that I've been doing this. I don't want to count the number of meetings I've gone to. That would just depressing. It's too many. But I am here to talk about that tonight. So it's not going to be me just lecturing. I don't like that. I like more of a back and forth, a give and take. So if you have questions while I'm talking, throw your hand up and we'll deal with it right then while you're thinking about it, while we're talking about it. I don't want to wait until the end and then have to circle back to what we were doing before. So feel free to interrupt me, ask your questions. We'll go into a back and forth and we'll get questions answered and get more of a discussion than a lecture. So how many people here are elected? All right, and the rest are appointed to commissions and boards?
No.
Okay, all right, great. How many are the chairs of their boards? All right, good. So we'll be covering that as well. How many secretaries of boards? All right, so we got a good mix in here. That's good stuff. All right, because we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff: agendas, minutes, motions, stuff during the meeting, stuff after the meeting, all kinds of topics. So we'll try and cover as much as we can. I think, are we here for a couple of hours?
Yes.
6 to 8.
I reserved you until for 3 hours.
Over 3, excellent. That's fine. Three. Actually, I prefer 4. I prefer 2 hours of break and 2 hours. There's a lot of stuff to cover. So we will do what we can. Typically, it's the questions and answers that make it go so long. So we'll see how it is. All right. So I do like to start off with just talking about parliamentary procedure for just a little bit. I'm sure most of you have heard of Robert's Rules. That's what everyone always falls to. I rushed out of my office because I was in a hurry when I left, so I didn't grab it. But it is a huge book. It is 812 pages long. It is a tome of a book. I don't believe anyone here has probably read it through. I don't recommend it unless you have insomnia. It is quite a read. It is far more of a research book than it is a reading book. It's more like an open book test kind of thing that you want to have with you. Actually, I don't even recommend you have it with you at meetings. There's a smaller one called Robert's Rules in Brief. That's what you want to have at your meeting. It's a lot more manageable. You can flip through it, you can find things. It's much better. But all that being said, click the next one real quick. This is the kind of group that was made for. Okay, it was not made for what we're doing. It was made for this. This is the
Nation?
No, United Nations. Yes, this is the United Nations. The next one, I believe, is the House of Representatives, and then the next one is the European Parliament. So this is 781 people. This is a huge group. But this is what it was designed for. It was designed for these massive groups of people where you do need to stand up to be recognized to speak to the chair. You need someone to repeat the motion so that everyone can hear it. You need all those parliamentary things to happen, or people don't understand what's going on and they don't know what they're voting on and they don't know who's talking and they don't know what's going on. So that's what it's written for. Now the next slide is going to show you 2 more actually. I put that in there. This is what we have. We have 5 people, 7 people, maybe 9 people. Sitting around, sometimes folding tables, not even, official boardrooms, and so we think, oh yeah, let's take these 812 pages and 63 rules of how to deal with motions and apply it to these small, pretty much informal boards. We're not that situation. We're not, I don't recommend that someone in a board of 5 people has to stand up to be recognized by the chair and speak. I mean, you could, if you say, we follow Robert's rules, well, then that's what you have to do. And I highly doubt any of us are doing that. I know we don't in our city. So it really isn't applicable to us. So what I always say is, rather than referring to Roberts as your parliamentary authority, just say, we refer to Roberts in matters of parliamentary procedure, but that we don't adopt them as our rules, because they're just not applicable to us. It's just, it's a mountain you don't want to climb to have to do that. So we refer to them, we use them, we reference them in points of order, in points of discussion, when people are saying like, hey, what's going on? What do I do? How do I do this? We flip open the book and we say, well, Robert says this. Does that apply to us, or do we have to change it and massage it a little bit to make it more realistic to what we're doing here today? So that's always my recommendation. It just makes our lives a lot more simple. So, but to go on from that, really what we're going to be talking about today, you can flip to the next slide. This is what we're going to be talking about today. It's the basic core principles of parliamentary procedure. What is it to follow parliamentary law, parliamentary rules, and run an effective meeting? You need these 4 things as a basis, as a foundation for running a successful meeting. So we're going to talk about a quorum, we're going to talk about equality, we're going to talk about decorum, and we're going to talk about the idea of majority rule. That's just the basis of democracy, that the majority gets to decide what happens. And the minority has a say, but they don't get to say no. They have to go along with it because the majority rules. So, all right, so let's move into it. Any questions on just that basic intro? All right. Okay, pretty simple stuff. All right, let's talk about a quorum. Anybody unfamiliar with that word quorum? You've probably all heard it before. It's just the minimum number of members that need to be there physically in that place. Now that COVID's over, we all have to be physically there again in order to hold your meeting. If it is generally the next whole number larger than half. So if you have an even number of people, like 8, well, it's not 4, it's 5. It's 1 more than half. It's the next whole number up. So if you have an odd number, 7, well, half of 7 is 3.5, so the next whole number is 4. So it's just 1 more than half. Now, this can change. Sometimes the rules will say it is a quorum of the sitting members. Well, that means if you have 2 vacancies, they're not included because they're not currently sitting on the board. Sometimes it says a majority of the members. Well, that doesn't matter if you have vacancies or not. If it's a 9-member board, the quorum is half of 9. So it can be a little situational. You have to look at it for each individual board and see what the rules say. Sometimes state law comes into play for like planning commission and DDA, stuff like that. Your charter might come into play. So you have to look at each individual board. But generally speaking, it does consider the members of the board, not necessarily who's vacant and whose term has lapsed and all that kind of stuff. If it's 9 members, then it's 5. If it's 7 members, then it's 4. So it's a good general rule to just stick with that. A lot of times the rules or the charter or the law will say that members continue to serve until they're replaced. So even if your term has expired, you continue to serve. This is outside of elected people, appointed people. If you're appointed to a board and your term expires, you continue to serve on that board until you're replaced or you resign. So you don't have to have a current appointment in order to continue to serve. Now, your rules and may say differently, but generally that's the rule unless it says differently. Elected people are a little different. When their term's up, their term's up. You don't get to keep going if you're elected. So, but that's a general idea of the quorum. Now, if you don't have a quorum, you can run into some issues. There are some pitfalls that you can fall into with a quorum. You're at the meeting, everyone took the time to be there. Well, the people that are there, not everyone, because you don't have a quorum. What do? The staff is there, you've got some members, and you think, well, let's just hear these staff reports. We don't want to waste our time. Everyone's here, let's just hear it anyway. That you're actually wasting time doing that, because all those staff people are going to have to come back to the next meeting anyway and give those same reports again when you have a quorum. So doing all that is actually wasting time, not saving time. And you're risking a very real violation of the Open Meetings Act, because now you're conducting city business when you don't have a quorum and it's not an actual public meeting. So you don't want to do that. If you don't have a quorum, there's actually 3 things you can do. I think I have a slide listing that. Next one. I see I skip over all that stuff. That should fill in. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there's 3 things you can do when you don't have a quorum. You can actually take action, but you can only take one of these 3 things. You can just immediately adjourn and just say, well, this meeting's not happening. The meeting's adjourned. See you next week, see you next month, whenever that next regular meeting is. Or you can say, let's postpone, let's wait 10 or 15 minutes. Can I hear a motion to just, just postpone the meeting for a half an hour. Let's see if we can get a quorum. I heard from Jim that he was gonna be running a little late, let's give him 15 minutes. Or you can think to yourself, well, let's postpone it for 30 minutes. You call Jim, you call Sally, you call Jill, let's see if we can get everybody here. You do that kind of thing. Or you can say, there's no way we're getting a quorum today, let's just reschedule the meeting for next week. It's outside of our regular schedule, but we need to meet before our next one because we have things we gotta do. Let's reschedule for next week and we'll hold a meeting then. You always wanna make sure you're giving the clerk adequate time to post because there are open meetings requirements that need to be met. You don't wanna say, let's meet tomorrow because that may not work, they may not have enough time. You always want to give a couple of days, but yes.
It's going to be a conundrum, but if you don't have enough for a quorum, is a less than quorum vote sufficient to postpone?
Yes, that's why these 3 things are the only things you can do. Because none of these 3 actions are public policy. So you're not violating the Open Meetings Act by passing these motions. You're just dealing with the machinations of your meeting. You're trying to figure out what to do. Yeah.
Okay, if we have 2 different meetings, we have a working meeting, so no votes are going. We still
Okay.
have to postpone or adjourn?
Yes, because
We're not
even working meetings are still public meetings. They're
Right.
still,
Well, the
yeah,
public
so,
would be there, which
yeah,
is
the
the
public
best.
is there, you're still within that OMA, definition. So, yeah, you'd still wanna either adjourn it or postpone it or reschedule it or do something with it.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can do some things, but you can only do these things. And you don't really want to go outside that because you're going to run into some OMA violations and people are going to say, hey, you didn't have a quorum and you were talking about thus and such and that's public policy and you can't do that. So basically what you can do is deal with the meeting and figure out what to do. Yeah.
So for planning commission, this is obviously a very rare thing, but it can happen. Would, in deciding how long you're postponing it,
Yeah.
rescheduling it, is that based on a majority vote of the folks that are there?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there's only 3 people that are there, well, 2 of them have to decide to, what to do. So if you have that few people, like 1 or 2 or 3, I would recommend just adjourning and going away. I wouldn't recommend that few number of people set another meeting for 9 people being required to attend. So yeah, if it's that small. If you're just 1 shy of a quorum, then you can probably schedule a meeting. But if you're 2 or 3 people shy, you should probably just adjourn and wait. And in that situation, if you do have business that needs to be discussed before the next regular meeting, like it's a month away and you got to meet before then, but you don't have enough people to really decide that, just adjourn. The chair and staff people can figure out, what to do with a special meeting. They can call a special meeting and get everyone's input on the date and time and stuff like that and figure it out from there. Yeah. All right. Any questions on quorum? It's a fairly short topic, but all right. Okay, so next item. What was the next one? I think it was yeah, see, I just skip around. I don't follow them exactly. I think, yeah, what was I think it was, hold on, I can't find the, never do that in my head. Oh, equality. All right, let's talk about, I think equality was next. So, everyone who's on your board, whether it's elected or appointed, whether they're the chair or just a sitting member, everyone got there the same way. No one was no one was deemed more appointable than someone else or more electable than someone else. Everyone's on the same footing. Everyone was elected freely, or everyone was appointed the same way. No one inherited their position from, the previous poobah. We're all there. We all have the same responsibilities. We all have the same rights. No one has any special standing. Now, there are some things the chair can do in their position that's different than a regular board member. But outside of that, even the chair got there the same way that everyone else did. So there is that sense of equality across the board. No one has the right to speak first all the time because they've been there for 20 years and everyone else is new. Or they have the right to make all the motions and they feel offended if someone else makes a motion and they're forced to second it instead of make it. That's not a thing. Everyone's equal. Everyone has the same standing and the same authority and the same responsibility. So, and it does come down to that. It's both. It's not just authority. It's also responsibility. And we'll deal with that a little bit later when we're talking about abstentions and not voting issues. Everyone has the authority to act, and everyone has the responsibility to act and participate. Someone who's on a board, elected or appointed, who just refuses to participate, regularly just stays silent during votes, isn't really participating. If they're appointed, remove them. Get someone else who's going to actually participate. This isn't a job for passive people. This is people who are appointed and elected to city boards. They need to participate, or else why are they there? So, it's not just a feather in your cap. We want you to work. So based on that equality, it applies to every aspect of the meeting. It applies to the public comment, it applies to motions, it applies to voting, it applies to debate, it applies to the time on the agenda when it's your turn to make comments. All of that stuff is everyone's equal. No one gets to go first all the time. No one's forced to go last all the time. I highly recommend for the secretaries of the boards, when it comes to votes, if it's a voice vote, if it's just like, say aye, say nay, that's fine. But if it comes to a roll call where we're actually saying names, do it random. Don't do the same order every time. So no one gets in that habit of, I always follow Jim and Sally always follows me, and mix it up so that people don't have that influence on the next vote, that they would in that order. It's really simple to do. We have technology. You can just open up a spreadsheet and do a random number generator and, get a random list of names in a couple of seconds. So, or go to ChatGPT, it'll probably do it for you too. I don't know if how you guys are dealing with AI. We have a moratorium on it in Grand Ledge. We don't let anybody use it because it's just not reliable. We're not there yet. I don't know if any of you spend any time with it, but it's still rife with errors and what the programmers like to call hallucinations, which I always think is an interesting thing to apply to a computer. But that's the phrase they use. So, but it does. It kind of just, if it can't give you what you want, it'll just make it up because it wants to give you what you want. So, it's like a small child, it'll willingly lie to you because it wants to make you happy. Did you eat that candy? No. It's like, well, okay. Yeah, I don't want to hear no, I want to hear the truth. So it's a thing, but use it wisely. Anyway, that was a little segue. So let's talk about equality. Let's just kind of go through a meeting and see how we can apply equality to the whole meeting. So obviously meeting starts with a call to order. The chair puts down the gavel, meeting's called to order. That's one of the things that the chair has that's a little bit above everybody else. They have the authority to call the meeting to order. No one else does. No individual member can say, let's get the meeting going. I call it to order. That only the chair can do that. So the roll call, that can be in alphabetical. That's fine because it's just a roll call. It's not that big a deal. And you don't necessarily have to do that out loud. The chair can just say, the secretary will record the roll. You don't have to do it out loud. A lot of the elected boards like to do it out loud just because it's a performative process and it's part of the thing, and so you do it. But the more casual boards, that's fine. So I should have pulled up one of your agendas and had it ready, but I didn't have time to print it out. Do you all do like an audience participation portion pretty early in the meeting before you get to any business? Okay, do you have more than one? Is there another one at the end of the meeting?
Yeah, so-
Okay, good, fantastic. Okay, do you do the thing where the audience can participate at each item? Okay, so there's one in the beginning, one at each item, so it's pretty much all through the meeting. This is the elected boards. What about the appointed boards? They do the same?
Like the planning commission has like a public comment that is for non-agenda items,
Okay,
and then public can comment on agenda items as we go through.
okay. So, I would recommend that you not limit debate to non-agenda items and let people talk about what they want to talk about. I've never seen it happen. I've never seen a lawsuit about it, but I have heard lawyers recommend that because there is the potential for the public to say, hey, now you're telling me what I can say. You're not just telling me when I can say it, but now you're telling me what I can and can't say. Yeah.
But, you know, as he was mentioning, we have the open discussion at the beginning, and then on each item, if you're gonna speak on an agenda
Right.
item, we request
Yep.
that you wait till that agenda.
That's
item
fine,
comes
but
up.
maybe they can't stay. Maybe they can only be there for 10 minutes and they want to talk about it. And then they got to go. And you're telling them they can't, they have to wait until later to talk about that. So, and really what it comes down to is, why can't they? Why can't they just talk about what they want to talk about in the open comment section? You know, there's not a negative to it. You know, it's not like they're, I don't know. Yeah, it's just something to think about, to talk about. You know, it's your culture, it's your policy. You know, whatever you guys decide, you can do. But there's potential for issues with it. The Open Meetings Act clearly gives you the right to regulate public comment. You can regulate the time, you can regulate when on the agenda it happens, you can regulate how much time you give them, all that kind of stuff. But what you can't do is require them to sign in. You can't require them to give you a name or an address. You can't require them to tell you anything. You know, what it comes down to is the Open Meetings Act prohibits you from creating any sort of barrier to that public participation. And if someone doesn't want to give you their name and you're requiring their name, now you've created a barrier where they can't participate unless they meet that requirement. And that's what you can't do, yes.
You can ask.
You can ask, you can absolutely ask, but you can't require it. Yeah, you can, yeah, and our mayor does the same thing. He specifically says, we ask that you give us your name and address. But if people don't, hey, they don't, not a big deal. Yeah. So, I mean, you think to yourself, well, why would one want to hear from someone who doesn't live here? You know, and yeah, why would you? Who cares? They don't live in the city. Why is their opinion, you know, why would you want to listen to them? But they're a member of the public, so they get a chance to talk. So, you know, it is what it is. How much time do you give people at that open one in the beginning?
3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I've seen some cities and townships give up to 5. But when you start extrapolating that, you know, you get 10 people and you give them each 5 minutes, an hour your meeting just went by. You know, that's a lot of time. So it's something to think about, you know, as far as you think 2 minutes or 3 minutes is too short, but when you get a lot of public, that 2 or 3 minutes starts stretching out. And if people can't really convey what they want to tell you in 2 or 3 minutes, they're probably not gonna do it in 5 either.
Mm-hmm.
You know, more time is not gonna help them. So, do you have a timer up that the public can see as they're talking? That kind of counts down?
We did.
Yeah, that's good. We implemented that as well, and I see people, they'll be at the lectern and they'll have their papers and the little timer is there and it turns red when it gets to the 1 minute mark, and I can see when it happens even though I can't see the timer because they start flipping through their pages trying to get to the point when they see that they only have a minute left. So, you know, it does help people, you know, speed it up and get to the point. So that's definitely a good thing. So the public participation, again, like I said, it's your culture, it's your policy. If you want to do it for each individual item, or if you want to just say, no, we're not doing that anymore, we're only doing it at the beginning and the end, I've seen it all ways. When people comment on the individual agenda item at that time, do you respond to them, or is it just an opportunity for them to comment specifically on that thing? Or if they ask a question, is there sort of a back and forth?
No.
No? Okay, good. Yeah, try and limit that back and forth with the public as much as you can. It seems anti-transparent, for government to be like that and to say we can't, go back and forth with the public at a meeting. But the risk is that you're talking about water sewer rates, and the public asks you a question about, well, what's the increase gonna be? And you say, well, it's gonna be 6%. And then after the meeting, it comes out that it was only gonna be 4% and you remembered wrong. Well, now it's 6%. And it doesn't matter how much you put out the message that it's 4%, it's 6%, because that's what you said at the meeting. So the risk of that immediate feedback with public, there's a real risk to it, to misinformation, unintentionally. It's not like you're trying to lie to the public. It's just in that moment you don't remember right, and now you got a problem. So what we do, and I recommend the same for you, I have an actual script that I give the chairs to read and the mayor to read when it comes to that time, and it says, our rules prohibit us from interacting with you at this time. So it puts it on the procedure and not on the person. And it turns it from I don't want to talk to you to I can't talk to you right now. I'm not allowed to. And then we say, if you have a concern that you want us to address, please contact City Hall. Please send an email, please fill out a concern form, please, because a lot of people, they don't realize, they think, and it always makes me laugh. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years and I still see it. People will come to a council meeting to file a complaint that they could have easily taken care of by just calling City Hall and talking to somebody for 5 minutes, and it would have taken care of it. And they wouldn't have had to leave their house at 7 o'clock at night and come to a city council meeting and, wait to talk and go through the whole thing. It's just, I don't know what it is. Sometimes people get that in their head that, well, I want to deal with this, and the only way to address this is to go to a city council meeting. And it's like, wow, man, if that was the only way to address it, we got a problem. If you have to take all your stuff to the city council, that's not great, but that's what people think. So it still happens. So, yeah. All right, so beyond the public participation, you start getting into the agenda. You can't, it's up to you whether you want to actually officially approve your agenda. You don't have to. It's a good thing to do because it sort of gets everyone on the same page, and everyone at the meeting agrees, yes, we are going to deal with these items of business tonight. And no one's caught off guard. No one's, well, I didn't know what it was that we were talking about tonight. Everyone has the agenda. Everybody agrees, yes, this is what we're doing tonight. So it does have that benefit to actually have a motion and a second and a vote on the agenda. That doesn't mean that things can't be added later. And it doesn't mean that when you get to an item on that agenda, you can say, we're not ready for this. I make a motion that we postpone this until the next meeting. It doesn't require you to deal with all those things right there that night, but it does require you to talk about them and figure out, are we gonna deal with it or not? And then everyone knows what's gonna happen and the order that it's gonna happen. Really, technically, it's not called an agenda. It's called an order of business. And because that's what it is. It's just, this is the order of things that we're gonna be talking about. So, but we all call them agendas because it's easier to say. You can easily do that. I highly recommend that you do that. The next order of business is most likely the minutes from the last meeting. Get those taken care of. If there's any bills to pay, all that sort of, mundane, paperwork kind of stuff. If someone is at the meeting, but they weren't at the last meeting, can they vote to approve the minutes from that meeting where they were not in attendance?
I don't know that one.
Yes, they can. They don't have to be at the meeting to approve the minutes. That's one of the most common things I see people when they want to abstain from the vote because they weren't at the meeting. Like, well, no, that abstention, that's not what abstentions are for. That just because you weren't there doesn't mean you can't vote to approve it. You can say, well, I wasn't there, so if anybody has any corrections, please, make them known. But if no one has any corrections, then, you can vote on it. That it's just the minutes. It's not that, the minutes shouldn't be that detailed anyway. We'll get into that later. So then, once you're done with the minutes, you're on to your business. And that's where we really start talking about equality. Who has the right to make all those motions in seconds, and who has the right to talk first in debate, and who has the right to call questions and end debate and all that kind of stuff. And the easy answer is everybody. Everybody has the right to do that. Typically, the chair doesn't make motions and doesn't make seconds because they're seen as the leader of the meeting and they're keeping things going. But they can. If an item of business comes up and nobody's making a motion, the chair can say, well, I move we do this, and then wait for a second. The chair doesn't lose that ability to make motions in seconds just because they're the chair. They're still a member of the board. They can do it. It's not a conflict of interest, just because they're the chair. It's just not recommended because they do have that role of leading the meeting, and so they want other people to sort of take up that cause. So once someone makes a motion, have you ever heard the phrase friendly amendment? Okay, it's not a thing. Okay. So in the few seconds in between someone saying I move to, or more commonly so moved, because the chair will say our next item of business is a motion to approve the minutes, and someone says so moved, that's fine. If we were following Robert's rules, that's not okay, but in our world it's okay. So in the couple of seconds between I moved and I second, the person who made the motion can change it. They can say, let's just pick something out of the air. I move we buy a police car for $5,000 from John's Ford dealership. And in the second before someone says, I second, they realize, oh shoot, it wasn't 5,000, it was 3,000. They can say, wait, I'm sorry, I meant to say 3,000. I move that we make a motion to purchase a car for 3,000. They can do that. But the second that someone says second, or more commonly support, that opportunity is gone. At that point, you have a motion, you have a second. Now the motion is everyone's. Now everybody has to agree if we're going to change it. Now it's sort of in stone. Now it's written down. This is what we're talking about. So if at that point someone realizes, no, you misspoke, it was supposed to be 3,000. Well, now we got to have a motion to amend it. So it becomes a little more technical. So let's talk about motions to amend for a little bit. You want to think about it like the Russian nesting dolls. I don't know the real term because I'm not Russian. And I know there is a name for them. But you know the little Russian nesting dolls, the main motion is the little doll inside. And then you can have a doll outside of that, a motion to amend. And you can have another doll outside of that, a motion to amend, the motion to amend. That's where it stops. You can only have 3 dolls.
Good.
Okay? And at that point, you have to vote on that biggest doll and get back down to that first motion to amend and deal with that and work your way back down in. So you can have 2 motions to amend, but that's it. Now it gets a little tricky. So let's say we have that motion. It's we're gonna buy a police car. We're gonna buy it for $5,000. Well, we'll stick with 5 because that's what it's in my head. We're gonna buy it for $5,000 and we're gonna buy it from John's Ford. Someone says, I move we amend to spend $6,000. Someone seconds it. So now what are we talking about? Are we talking about buying a car? We're only talking about whether it's 5 or 6. If someone starts talking about whether it should be John's Ford or June's Ford, that's out of order. It's not what we're talking about. We're only talking about whether it's 5 or whether it's 6. And once we decide that, then we can get back to the main motion and talk about everything. You know, whether it's a police car or a fire car, whether it's John or Jill, whether it's, you know, whatever it is. But once you have that added layer of a motion to amend, now you've limited what you can talk about to just that motion to amend. And that applies to everything. You know, planning commission is talking about a site plan, and they have a motion to approve it, and then someone says, I move we amend that motion to require the site plan have 3 more parking spaces. Well, now we're not talking about the whole site plan anymore. We're only talking about those extra 3 spaces. And that's it. And we can't talk about anything else until we deal with those 3 parking spaces. And once we have, then we can move on to other things. So in all of that discussion, that's when the chair's role really comes to the forefront, because the chair needs to be on top of things, and they need to feel like they have the authority to pick up that gavel and say, you're out of order. We're not talking about that right now. We're only talking about the 3 parking spaces. That's what we're talking about. And keep the meeting, you know, on track and focused on what's actually going on. So it can be tough. You know, what if your chair just doesn't have the chutzpah to do it, you know, and can't tell people no. You know, the members can do it. The members can put up their hand and say, you know, Chair Jones, point of order, can you please ensure discussion is relevant to the motion at hand? You know, sort of prompt chair to do their job. You know, hopefully they do it on their own, but if they don't, you know, you can always prompt them and help them along. So all of that to say, when you're doing all of that, no one is above anyone else. No one can say, well, you know, that car wash is closest to my house, so I get to make the motion to approve that site plan. You know, or I've been on the board longer than you, so I get to make the motion. You know, or I'm the biggest supporter of the police station, so I get to make the motion. It's whoever makes it, and whoever seconds it. Now, if someone makes a motion, can they vote no?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Someone who seconds it, they can vote no.
Yep.
You know, they may want the motion to be voted on because they want to say no. They don't want to buy a cop car. But if the motion's never brought up to do it, they can't say no. And then it's just sort of out there. Now it's like, well, are we going to do it or aren't we? You know, but if someone makes a motion and a second and everybody votes no, well, now it's done. Now we're not doing it. And now in the next meeting, no one can bring it up again because we already dealt with it. It's done. You know, it can't be just brought up over and over and over until the person who wanted it to say yes gets a yes out of everybody. Yeah.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
One thing that bothered me when sitting on a board is somebody made a motion before I had a time, before they got to me to speak.
Okay.
Is there,
Okay, so let's talk about that.
because is there a way to say you have to wait till everybody's done speaking before you can make a motion?
No, because you should make the motion first anyway. If there's not a motion and a second, then how do you know what it is you're talking about? If you're talking about the cop car before you get to the motion, then how do you know you're talking about $5,000 cop car from John's Ford?
No.
You need something, you need a motion and a second so that you know what it is that you're talking about.
Right, but what I'm saying is, like, for example, if there's already a proposed, you know, like an agenda item.
Yeah, on the agenda, yeah.
And someone before you makes a motion, but you wanted to make another motion, a different motion.
Then
Like
you make a
wanted-
motion to amend.
Right.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, if someone jumps ahead of you and says, you know, I move we buy the car from John's Ford for $5,000, but you wanted to make a motion for $3,000, then just make a motion to amend it. You can do that immediately. You don't have to wait for debate. You can just put your hand up and say, I move we amend that motion to say $3,000. And if someone seconds it, well, then now you're talking about that. But if you make a motion to amend and nobody seconds it,
It's done.
then we're not talking about that. And the minutes don't even reflect that you said it. It didn't happen. Yeah,
I would assume that there's some time of discovery, which would have nothing to do with any emotions, where you're looking at cop cars, and you're looking at prices, and you're looking at jobs, and you're looking at all that. By the
Yes.
time you come to make a motion, you've already done all this discovery, and you have it in front of you.
right.
And all that conversation about that topic has been broached, and now
Yes.
you're to the point where you're going to go, okay.
Actually act on it, yeah. So it depends on the culture of how Linden works. You know, if you guys have a city manager? Okay, so the city manager, the city clerk, the city treasurer, the police chief, they're looking at all that, and they're giving you all the information that they have. You know, and so it makes it seem as though, to the public especially, that you get to that point on the agenda, someone makes a motion, someone makes a second, and then there's a vote. Because everyone on the board is fine with it. They know the manager has made the research, they know the police chief has done his job, they know, the information that's presented to them is good. But the problem with that is the public sees it as a rubber stamp. They see it as, why are we at this meeting? You're not even talking about all this stuff. How do we know what's going on? So that's why I always recommend you get to a motion, even if you know everyone's gonna vote yes, no one's gonna have a problem with it. The chair should still say, can I get a report from the manager? Can I get a report from the clerk on this? Some sort of presentation of the information. And then the chair should always say, to the board, does anybody have any questions? And if no one does, well, then no one does, and you can vote on it. But there should at least be some pro forma, interaction so that the public can see, oh, they're doing something. They're not just rubber stamp, all through the meeting, and 15 minutes later, 5 things are done, and, we're all going home. So, yeah.
That leads to my next question. So do you have to wait until your time to speak to make a motion?
No. Motions can be made by anyone at any time. You don't have to, you should be recognized, don't interrupt people. But you don't, so do you have an order where everyone speaks, or is it just?
Our mayor would say, randomly,
Okay. Just
obviously.
call on people to see if they have a comment. Yeah, so if you have a motion that you don't like the way the motion's worded, and you want to make an amendment, just throw up your hand and say, I move we amend that. And just get it out right away, and don't wait for, things to get sidetracked. Yeah, that's fine. It's not out of order to make a motion to amend.
Or to make a motion?
Yeah, or to make a motion, yeah, that's fine. So we can talk about debate a little bit. It's courtesy to let the person who made the motion talk first,
Right.
because they're the ones that spoke up first. They want to talk about it, so you let them talk first. That's fine. You don't have to, but it's common parliamentary courtesy to do that. But after that point, it's anybody's game. Anybody puts their hands up, the chair recognizes them, and they go. Now, the dance that the chair has to play is that you don't want to let someone talk 2 or 3 or 4 times, and someone else hasn't had a chance at all. So the chair sort of has to really manage, who has spoken, who hasn't, and make sure everyone has a chance to do it. What I give our chairs a notepad with maybe, for every business. So if there's 5 items of business on the agenda for that meeting, they've got 5 pre-printed note pages with everyone's name on them. And so they can write down an M next to the person who made the motion, they can write an S next to the person who made the second, and then they can just make little marks. Okay, John spoke, Jill spoke, Susan spoke, and then they can sort of track that, during each item of debate. And then once that motion's done, they can just churn it over. It's not a distraction to them. They've got a nice clean sheet, to do the next one. So there's little tricks that you can use to help the chair, monitor that. Yeah.
And the planning commission, the way we typically do it, and I want your feedback if this is okay or if it should be changed, is that when the agenda item comes up, Adam, our city planner, will present to us and the public
Mm-hmm.
kind of the background.
Yeah.
And then I'll open it up for discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go through each, Commissioner Dick, do you want to speak?
Right, yeah.
And then I'll ask if there's, after we've gone through that, I'll give one more round, like any other comments.
Mm-hmm.
And then ask if there's a motion and then go through that. Is that
Okay.
an acceptable?
Yeah, so the planning commission especially, I should have caveated all this with the planning commission, it's kind of a different animal because it's dealing with such complicated like site plans and variances and special use applications. There's a lot of moving pieces, so it's really tough to do that leading motion. You know, sometimes you'll have it. Sometimes the planner will know, this is what I need you guys to do. Here's the motion. We need a motion to approve the site plan. You know, and when it's that, yeah, you can do it right up front. And you can say, yep, okay, can I hear a motion to approve the site plan? And then you get that motion second, and then you start talking about it, and you change this and you change that, and you make amendments. But then sometimes, you know, you're talking about something that's a lot more complicated. It's a special use. You know, you're not really sure what contingencies you're going to apply to it. You know, so you have that staff report, and then you talk about it a little bit, and then you all sort of figure out what it is that you're doing. You're approving the special use, and you've got these two contingencies, but you're not going to put these other three on it. So rather than make the motion and then have to amend it for all that stuff, you sort of work it out, you know, ahead of time. So the planning commission's a little bit different, but the city council, the park and rec, you guys have a cemetery board that you deal with at all?
But we have,
No.
we got someone to take care of that, but we don't.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, you know, the planning commission is really kind of its own special stepchild to parliamentary stuff because it's just a little odd. You know, but like a park and rec board, they're just recommendatory. They don't really, you know, everything they do is approved by council. And planning commission, I mean, council doesn't see site plans. You know, the planning commission approves those, and that's it. You know, there's not a second step to that like there is with your other advisory boards. So yeah, sometimes they do have to kind of work things out before they figure out exactly what it is that they're doing. Yeah, but whenever you possibly can, try and follow the motion, second, debate, vote. If you can follow that 4-step process for all of your items, then you'll have a much easier time with consistency, with fairness, with equality. You know, you want to get that motion, what are we doing? You want to get a second so that you know someone else wants to talk about it too, and then you do a debate, and then you do the vote. You can throw a staff report in there somewhere, you know, usually before debate, but yeah.
Okay, Mayor, make sure I'm saying this the right way. So when we do ours, I believe we have the topic.
Okay.
And then she'll open it up for the public.
Okay.
To comment on that.
Yeah.
So we hear them.
Okay.
Before we come back, am I right? Before
Okay.
we come back to make the amendment.
Yeah, yep, that's fine. So you guys have that individual, you know,
Right.
public comment on things,
Right.
yeah. So is that before the motion or after?
So, I have known I've been doing it wrong.
Oh.
I'm just being completely honest, I've known, and the reason being is we had 3 new council members.
Okay,
And so, making a motion, knowing all what you're teaching right
Yeah,
now, it takes time,
yeah, it does.
okay? And I wanted to always make sure that they had the opportunity at any point.
Mhm.
Does that to say their piece, make a change? Does that whatever before that final motion?
Yeah.
Went in. So it's more of me giving grace.
Yeah,
Knowing
yeah.
I'm doing it wrong and giving
Yeah.
grace for learning.
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of situation why I recommend that you don't adopt Robert's rules, but that you just refer to it, so that you have that flexibility
Yes.
to do that. Because you're absolutely right. You have a 5 or 7 member?
7.
7. So 3 out of 7, that's not insignificant. You know, there's a learning curve for those 3 people. It can be very intimidating to go into a meeting and everyone knows exactly what's happening. People are making motions in seconds. The mayor's calling for votes and you're like, ooh, you know what is happening? I'm not sure how to participate in all of this. You know, so it can be a lot. So yeah, kudos to letting them learn, giving them that freedom. That's great. Yeah.
And can I, all the papers that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Please, I would love our boards to have it also.
Yeah. So so since we're talking about mayors, I do something for my mayor that whenever I mention it, clerks are always like, why did you say that? Because it's a lot of work. But I like doing it. Okay, you're not afraid. All right. So my mayor gets their own special agenda. It's not the agenda that everyone else gets. So their agenda, each page is a single item. So the first page, all that's on it is the roll call. And when the roll call is done, that page is turned over, and the next page is the pledge. That's turned over, the next page is audience. And that's done, they flip that over, and it's in different font colors, it's in big font so they can read it. And it has scripts on it. So, so in my defense, I've been doing this for a while, so this wasn't something that I came up with my first year. So there are scripts on it, so the mayor can actually read out and doesn't have to remember everything that they
That's
have
a
to
good
say.
idea.
You know, they read out the audience participation script. They read out, you know, the clerk will please, the Monday, January 23rd, 2026 City Council meeting is hereby called to order. The clerk will please call the roll. Like, that's all spelled out. They don't have to read it every time because it's in their head, but it's there. You know, the script for the audience is there. At the end, each one says motion, second, staff report, debate, vote. And it'll say what kind of vote. It'll say voice vote, it'll say roll call vote. Because sometimes they like doing one, sometimes they like doing the other. So I try to give the mayor as much of a script to the meeting as they can. Some of the other chairs have heard about it, so now the planning commission wants it too, and the city planner wasn't super happy about that, but he's new, so I was like, well, that you didn't know what you were getting into, so now he has to do it too. But you know, one of our other council members, he's had some vision issues, so we print his entire packet on 11 by 17 paper. The page is like blown up. It's like magnified on it. It's like a giant piece of paper, and he still grabs his magnifying glass to read it. One of the other members, they don't like to do it like a book. They like to do it like a pad. So theirs is double-sided on the short edge instead of the long edge. So I mean, but technology lets you do it. It's super easy. It's not like it takes us
You just
5
opened
hours.
up a can of worms.
Yeah, you know, it's just, you know, but that's one of the things that the staff can do for you beyond just the reports. You know, when we're preparing stuff for the boards, you know, you guys should have the tools available to you to do your jobs as effectively and easily as you can. So, you know, don't be afraid to call staff and say, hey, is this something that you could do? If they can't, they'll say no. You know, they're not yes men. You know, they're not gonna be like, oh, yep, we can do that. And then they get back to the office and they're like, oh my God, why did we say yes? You know, if they can't do it, they can't do it. Yeah, she already did. I heard her. So, yes. Yes. I'll give you something else as well. We also do an orientation for all of our members, whether they're appointed or whether they're elected. You guys do that as well?
Yeah.
Great. That is excellent. You know, it's such a benefit, especially for the elected people, because like I said, they go to a city council meeting, it's much more formal, it's much more, I don't want to say non-participatory, but it seems to take up its own momentum. You know, it just sort of goes, and a new member sees the ball just rolling, and they don't want to get in front of it because it seems intimidating. So it really helps to
Our
do
city did agree
orientations.
with us.
Yeah, good.
We have a
That's
new
excellent.
mayor and 3 new people, so.
Oh, all right, great, all right. Okay, where were we? Oh, we were motion, second, debate, vote. Okay, so the person who made the motion, you know, let them talk first if they want to. If they don't want to, that's fine. But it's just kind of a courtesy to let them do it. You know, not always, but whatever. The person who made the second, you know, they don't necessarily. They're the same as the person who made the motion. They may not vote yes either. They may not actually support the motion. That's why it's a second and not a support. They just want to talk about it and vote about it too. So they can also vote no. And that leads to another thing. People who want to vote no should be allowed to say no. So don't have a motion that says a motion to deny. Because now you're forcing people that want to say no to say yes.
It's too confusing.
And the people that want to say yes are forced to say no. So you want to make sure your motions are always worded positively. It's a motion to approve, a motion to grant, a motion to award, take that positive action wording in there so that people can say yes when they mean yes and no when they mean no. Now, does that mean that if you have a motion to approve and you say no, did you deny it or did you just not approve it? You know, no, you denied it. Yeah, there's no second chance. The people can't come back and say, you know, hey, I'm coming back. You didn't approve me last time, so I'm coming back again. It's like, no, we denied you. That was a denial. You know, that people don't go back to judges because, you know, the judge said yes. You know, the appeals come when the judge says no. So, you know, it's not that's just not how it works. So actually that kind of brings in an American thing as far as parliamentary law. Only in America is there a motion to reconsider. It is not a thing in European parliaments. So America doesn't like to not be able to come back and redo things because we're reactionary. We do things fast. You know, that's our history. So we have the motion to reconsider because sometimes we do things that are a little bold. But the thing with the motion to reconsider is it can only be brought up by someone who voted in the majority. So if the motion passed, it has to be someone who said yes that brings it back to reconsider it for a no. If it failed, it has to be someone who said no that brings it back to be reconsidered for yes. So if you have a motion that fails, someone who voted yes and wanted it to pass can't bring it back.
Question, what if it's a tie? Somebody's missing.
Oh, somebody's missing? If it's a tie, then it didn't pass.
Can it be brought back?
Nope, it didn't pass. Well, it can, but it can be bought back by either side. Yes.
The motion to consider, does that have to be done during the same meeting?
No. Okay, so Robert's rule says that a motion to reconsider can only be brought up during the same meeting. But Roberts considers a meeting like a multi-day thing. You know, the meetings of Parliament and meetings of the House, they're not a single day like we do, a single 3 hours and the meeting is done. They have, you know, they go into session and weeks go by before the session ends. So it's in that time frame that it can be brought up again for reconsideration. Well, that's not our world. We don't do that. So what has developed in our world is it has to be reconsidered at the next meeting, right? Or it's too late. You can't bring it back 6 months from now. Yeah. Yes.
What happens if they vote no on something that could have potential legal ramifications?
Yeah, so that's the other part of reconsideration. If something has been put in place, if you approved a contract,
Or you voted no on something?
or you voted, well, not so much when you voted no, but when you voted yes, and the contract's been awarded, and the vendor has started work, they're going. You know, they've already mowed twice. You know, you can't then go back and reconsider that. The work's been started. It's too late. You can't pull that back. Now, on a motion that has failed, that doesn't come into play because it failed. So nothing could have been put in place that can't be undone. So you can reconsider it because nothing happened. But on a motion that passes, you know, once things are in motion and things are set, you know, the ground's been broken or the house has already been demolished, you know, what are you gonna do? You can't reconsider it, it's been done.
So if it's failed, it can be reconsidered at the next meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but only by someone who voted no.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so the minority in that case that voted yes can't bring it back up again.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it has to be someone in the majority that says, okay, we'll reconsider, we'll bring it back up. Yeah, but hopefully you guys are being thorough and judicial and you're not acting quick and you're not making knee-jerk decisions and you won't have to deal with that. Yeah, so I have had it come up on my boards, but it tends to be more where we award a contract and then the contractor just kind of falls through. And so we bring it back up for reconsideration to pull the contract out, you know, and award it to somebody else. That's typically more what happens, why it comes back up again. So, yeah, but no, that doesn't happen a lot. And then those contractors just aren't qualified contractors in the city anymore, so we don't let it happen again. All right, what's next after, we're talking about debate a little bit. So, you know, you've got debate going, it's getting a little hot. People are getting a little upset about what's going on because we're talking about a data center and people are getting out there. You know, that's another job for the chair to step in and keep the meeting civil. Keep the comments non-personal, keep the comments directed at the topic and not at individuals. As the chairs in the room, the minute you start seeing fingers, put your gavel down. It's getting personal. Put your fingers away. We're not pointing, we're not calling names, we're keep it civil, keep it professional, keep it, you know, talking about the topic and not about, you know, individual people. It's a quick and easy thing to see. It's a visual cue. You know, you see somebody pointing and it's like, oh, nope, we're not doing that. It's a little less easy when it becomes passive aggressive. It's a little harder to control, but you know, it can be. It just takes a little bit more of a deft hand. Sometimes you'll get the public, especially in your culture where you let the public comment on individual items, you know, even though that time has passed and now it's your turn to talk and debate, because the public has had that opportunity, they may feel more inclined to interject. They may call out things from the crowd. They may, you know, hoot and holler or boo or whatever. You know, as long as it's not disruptive, I wouldn't try and make a big deal about it. If it happens multiple times during a single debate, yeah, then you could put your gavel down and say, you know, please maintain decorum or we will go into recess until this has calmed down. You know, you can use that threat of, you know, you've been here long enough, we can be here longer.
Yeah.
You know, that'll tend to calm people down a little bit. You know, try and do what you can without being, you know, that heavy-handed authoritarian parent. You know, you want to maintain control without you know, using a whip. You know, use the gavel instead. You get down to the vote, like I said, sometimes it can be a roll call, sometimes it can be a voice vote. There really isn't a requirement either way. A voice vote is always fine, especially in a smaller group. The roll call vote really came out of those larger groups, those 7, 6, 500, you know, member groups where you don't, I mean, you do a voice vote, you have no idea what's happening unless there's only 10 no's. So that's where the roll calls came from. In our world, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, a voice vote's gonna be fine because it's not gonna be that close of a vote. You might have a 1 no, maybe 2 no's. If it does get to the point where you call for a voice vote and it is hard to tell, it's like, oh, I didn't realize this was so contentious. I've got half and half. Just call for a roll call. It's not out of order to do it again because you can't determine the outcome. You can just say, I couldn't determine that outcome. You know, Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote? And then you'll get it on record. That's a perfectly fine way of doing it. Or an individual member can do the same. If you do a voice vote like that and the chair says the ayes have it, a member can say, point of order, I would like a roll call vote. There doesn't need to be a second. It's just roll call vote. That's what you do. So you want to make sure everyone has that ability and that opportunity to do that and make sure everyone knows what's going on. The public and you. You know, the public has a right to know that as well, not just you guys. So you do the roll call and then everyone, then it's clear who voted yes and who voted no. And there are no passes. You either say yes or you say no. It's your time to vote. It's not, you don't get to say pass, come back to me, I haven't decided yet. It's like, no, you don't get to see what everyone's doing before you make your vote. Yeah.
Can I ask one?
Yeah.
So we're gonna go back and everyone's talking and everyone's got to, you know, and continues to talk. Call the question.
Okay, so the talk has been going on for a while. It's been 45 minutes. We're still talking about whether it's 3,000 or 5,000, and it doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. Yeah, somebody puts their hand up and says, point of order, I call the question. Someone else says, second, vote, no debate.
No debate. Debate's done.
You vote on it. If the vote passes, we're done talking. If the vote fails, well, then we get to talk some more. Yeah. So everyone decides whether debate has stopped, but only 2 people, you know, can call that at any time. But it does take a second. It doesn't, one person doesn't have the authority to require that vote. Yeah, it is a motion just like any other motion. And the chair can do that too. The chair can get tired and say, I call a question, and
If
someone
she
says
needs-
second,
Yeah.
let's get on with this. Yeah, sometimes that can happen, yeah,
It's
for
a good
sure.
thing sometimes.
Yep, yeah, hopefully it doesn't happen too much. Hopefully the debate's more fruitful than that, not so long. Yeah, so now you've gotten through it. You've gotten your motion, you got your second, you did your debate, you did your roll call, you're moving on to the next item. Before the chair says the next item for business, in those few seconds between calling the outcome of the vote and calling the next item of business, someone else can make a motion for anything. You're sort of in that space between items on your agenda, and someone can throw up their hand and say, I move we adjourn. And someone seconds, and now there's a vote. Because you've been here for 3.5 hours, there's still 5 items left, and you're tired and you want to go home. And so someone says, I move we adjourn. And someone says, yep, second, I'm done. I would recommend that someone else say, I move to amend that we reschedule and not just adjourn. So that you can take up the rest of that meeting. That's always something that's an option, especially if you've got a long agenda or just one item that took a long time. It's late in the day. What time do you guys' meeting start, City Council?
6:30.
Oh, nice, 6:30. I just got mine moved from 7:30 to 7. Maybe
6:30.
in another 25 years I can get them up another 30 minutes. But yeah, that's great, 6:30. So you guys have time before it gets late. I've had numerous meetings in my career where I did not get home until midnight because we didn't start until 7:30, and there was a full agenda, and there was a closed session, and there was a budget talk after that. And it's like, what are we doing? It is 11 o'clock at night, and we're just starting to talk about the budget. You think this is going to be fruitful? 6:30 is great. So hopefully you guys don't run into that too much where people want to get done before it's done. But it could still happen, I suppose. So in that situation, really the best thing to do is just a motion to adjourn and schedule the meeting, to pick it up at another day. Again, give staff, the time to do it. Don't make it the next day. Give them 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days to reschedule that meeting and post it and, get all those open meetings check boxes checked. So, so now you've moved through that space and you're at the next item and you go through the whole process again. You're at the end of the agenda. You guys have an opportunity when all the business is done. Is there an opportunity for the members to then make just comments on anything? Okay, that's great. That's the perfect opportunity to, if you know, you can then address comments that were made by the public during the meeting. So that's the time where you've had time to think about it. It's not in the moment, especially if staff has passed you a note, answering the question. You can address those. You can say, there was a comment made earlier in the meeting about mowing the parks. We've had issues with the contractor. We've dealt with them, and the problem.
Our city manager usually does all that.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity for them to do that. Yep, they can address those questions. Yeah, that's great. And that should be the last thing on the agenda, should be your comments. Don't let the public comment again after that. Like the last thing is you guys, and then adjourn. Now, if the adjournment is listed on the agenda, there doesn't necessarily have to be a motion. You're at that time. The agenda's done. The chair or the mayor can just put the gavel down and say, meeting adjourned. That's fine. If you're not at that point on the agenda, that's when you need the motion to adjourn. And you can do the motion at the end anyway. I mean, we do. Our board just feels more comfortable with it being more, formal and official like that. But it is not required. If you're at that point, then you're at that point, and the meeting's adjourned. So, any other questions on all of that? That was a lot about motions and seconds and debate and all that kind of stuff.
I got one.
No? Yeah.
So when there's like a split vote, usually the clerks do the roll call.
Yeah.
are we the one that says if the motion passes or fails, or?
It
Who would
depends on
that-
your culture. The
Okay.
secretary can do it, or the chair can do it. Either one is fine. Yeah, if it's a roll call, it's typically the clerk, the secretary that does it, because they're the ones that's calling the roll, and so they'll say, the ayes have it, and typically more with a voice vote than the chair does it, because they're the ones that are saying all those in favor, all those opposed. So, yeah, that's fine. Either way is fine. Yeah. Another way where the chair and the secretary sort of work together is in those situations where you don't really know what the motion's gonna be. Where it starts out one way, and this is another reason I recommend putting those motions on the agenda, so that you have a written starting point that you can make changes, you can actually make physical changes to as the amendments happen, and then everyone can kind of track that as the discussion goes along. But the chair and the secretary can sort of work together on that, and if it comes down to it, the chair can always say, can the secretary please read the motion, because you've been talking about it for 20, 30 minutes, and you want to make sure everyone knows, when the debate's gone on that long, I highly recommend repeating the motion before the vote. If it's real close, someone makes the motion, someone makes a second, there's like 5 minutes of debate, there's no amendments, everybody knows what's going on, that's fine, just call the roll. But if you've been talking for a while, especially if there's been an amendment, repeat that motion out loud. Let the public know, yep, we know what we're doing, we know what we're voting on. Let the board know this is the motion we're voting on. That happens a lot. The mayor will just look at me and he'll say, Mr. Newman, can you repeat the motion? We all need to know what it is we're doing, and I'll look at my notes and I'll piece it together from everything that happened during the debate. That happens a lot after closed session, especially because you don't know what you're gonna do. You go into closed session because you're talking about property and you don't know if you're gonna buy it or not. So you can't really list something on the agenda following that closed session. So you get out of closed session and then it is sort of fly by the seat of your pants and you're, what are we doing? What's the motion? That's a lot when the secretary and the chair kind of have to work together on that and get things done. Typically during the closed session, I'm not spending my time taking a lot of notes. I'm spending most of my time just writing down what I think the motion might be when we come out, so that I have a good starting point, to help with at the end. Because the closed session minutes shouldn't contain a lot anyway, beyond who was there and what was talked about. Let's take a little break. It's almost 7:30, and we're sort of moving into minutes, so that's gonna take a discussion. So let's take a 5 or 10 minute break, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about agendas and motions and minutes. You don't have to have a motion in a second for that. The chair can just call a recess, and the meeting's put on hold, and the chair pulls that member aside and says, "Look, what's going on? What do we have to deal with here? We can't continue with this. The meeting can't go on like this." That's the kind of thing that you really can't do with the public. It takes a little more to deal with them. The biggest issue with the public is obviously during public hearings. People don't come to public hearings because they're excited about what you're doing. They come to public hearings because they're mad about what it is that you're doing, and you're giving them the opportunity to tell you that, and they're going to. So do you guys increase the time available to the public during public hearings, or is it still just 3 minutes? Good. I have a lot of communities that give more time during public hearings, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because that's typically when you have more public. So not only are you giving the individual people more time, but you're giving the whole process more time. I've had public hearings where there's been 50, 60, 70 people in the room, and if each of those people are getting 5 or 10 minutes, you are gonna be there a while. You're not gonna get through that meeting.
We do allow them to, like a group, if they come in as a group.
That is great. So that's one of the things that you can do. You have a huge group come in, and it's gonna go on for a while. So one of the tactics that the board can do is the chair can sort of say, okay, hey, before we get this public hearing started, I'm gonna call a 5-minute recess. If the public that's in this room could please designate 4 or 5 or 6 people to speak on your behalf, we will give those individual people 10 minutes. And we will spend an hour on this public hearing, and we will hear your concerns. But you and we all know we don't have 5 hours to go through everyone individually. You know, be upfront about it. Be honest about it. You know, let them know, look, we want to hear from you, but we don't have 5 hours any more than you have 5 hours. Another tactic is when you have a huge group, make a motion to reschedule that public hearing for a meeting specifically for that reason, instead of having a bunch of other stuff on the agenda too. Yes?
You cannot do that with public comment, though, correct?
No, we're talking just about public
That's
hearings.
what I just wanted
Yeah,
to make sure.
yeah, this is just public hearings. So you can always reschedule a public hearing and give them a specific day and time. Say, look, we want to hear from you. Obviously, there is a lot of concern in this room about that. We are gonna reschedule this public hearing for a week from now, give them time to adjust their schedules, 2 weeks from now, depending on, you know, you might have more time constraints than that, depending on what it's for. And let them know, like, we're gonna set a meeting earlier in the day with more time available because we want to hear from you. You know, if all you do is just say, now there's too many people in here, we're not gonna hold this public hearing tonight. Oh, yeah, you're gonna hold it eventually, and you're gonna have a lot more people at the next one. So be honest and be open and be upfront with them and let them know, we do want to hear from you. And you could even open it a little bit that night. You could say, you know what, we're gonna open this public hearing tonight, but we are gonna limit it to the first 5 people. And we're gonna reschedule it for next week for everyone else. You know, and that's another tactic you can use to sort of keep that meeting from going on for 6 or 7 hours. The thing I like to remind people is, yes, it is a public meeting, but it is not the public's meeting. It's your meeting that is open to the public. It's not their meeting that you happen to be at. So you get to decide when your meetings occur, how long they are, what happens at them. It's your meeting. So you do have to allow them to participate, but you don't have to allow them to take over. So that's sort of the line that we're walking with the public. First and foremost, you want to make sure that you are being open and transparent. Don't let the public walk away with a feeling of being bamboozled or being shut up or ignored. You know, be upfront and open and let them know, you know, yes, we do want to hear from you. Yes?
What is the difference between a public hearing and comments?
Okay, so the public comment is just the regular time on the agenda that is just always there for the public to comment to you. A public hearing is a specific section of the agenda set aside for a single topic, like an industrial development district or a rezoning or an ordinance, some specific topic that either your charter or your ordinances or state law requires that you hold a public hearing specifically on that topic to hear from the public on. A lot of rezonings require that. A lot of special use permits require that. Ordinances often require that. TIF districts require that. You know, whenever you're going to talk about taxes, you probably have to do a public hearing. A lot of grants, a lot of state grants require that you hold a public hearing to get public input, and then you have to send those minutes to the state and prove to them that you did. Yeah, so it's the same as public comment in that it's an opportunity for the public to comment, but it's on a specific topic. And in that instance, you can tell people what it is they can talk about, because it's not just open comment, it's a public hearing, it's on a specific topic. So during a public hearing, someone comes up and starts talking about, you know, Oak Park instead of the rezoning, you can gavel them. And you can say that your comments are not in order right now. This is a public hearing about a rezoning. Please hold your comments until the end of the meeting, and then we'll listen to them then. Yeah. So that is the one time that you can regulate what people are saying. Yeah. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So when you are using the tool of rescheduling a public hearing, you have to be careful, because there are sometimes those state law requirements. There are the requirements of your charter or your code or your ordinances. So you may not be able to do it. You know, state law may require that you hold that public hearing within a certain amount of days of the grant being applied for. So you may not have a lot of wiggle room. But you may have a couple of days. You may be able to say, you know, we're gonna redo this in 2 days. You look at staff and you say, hey, can we hold this again in a couple of days and still meet those deadlines? And staff is like, yeah, we can do that. Okay, let's do that. You know, so as long as everyone's agreement that it can be done, you know, do that. You can, like I said before, you can sort of give the public an opportunity to elect spokesmen, you know, and limit the debate that way and limit the time, try and get through it. What you don't want to do is open the public hearing, listen to a couple of people, and then say, well, this has gone on long enough, we have things to do, the public hearing is closed. You know, that's the worst way to deal with it, because then you've got all those people that are there and they didn't know anything about it being cut short until it was, and now they're gonna be mad. So you wanna do it up front and let them know what's happening beforehand. So if you're at that meeting, especially for the city council, you're at that meeting and you see all those people, before the meeting starts, go talk to your clerk, go talk to your manager and be like, oh God, how do we handle this? What are we gonna do? Get everybody on board, figure out a game plan, and then put it in place. You know, make sure everyone's on board, and just be open and honest about it. You know, the public, I've never found the public to be combative or respond negatively to openness and honesty. Even if they don't want to hear it. If you're forthright with it, they'll be accepting of it, even if it means
Most of them, if they
postponing.
hear somebody get up and talk, and even though they put out their paper, and they've heard that same thing.
Yeah,
3 or 4 times,
they won't.
Then they
yeah.
might go up and say, you
Yeah.
know what, everyone's,
Yeah.
you know, kind of
Yeah.
spoke on the same
Yep.
thing.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
And
So,
even in the biggest
do you guys
things.
have a sign-in sheet for your public?
We have a sign in, and then they have to fill out a paper
Okay.
of where they're at. If it's a
Okay.
topic or if it's just public.
Okay.
First
So that's risky, because that could be interpreted as a barrier to participation. That I don't want to fill out a form. I don't want to tell you who I am. I don't want to tell you what it is I'm talking about. I just want to talk. I want to say my piece during the public participation portion. Yes.
So I want to add a little bit onto that. What we do, I also do make a general call to the audience to see
Yeah.
if there's anyone else that
Right.
wants to public comment.
Okay.
That way we're grabbing all those people that may not
Right.
have wanted to fill the card out.
Yep.
And we're grabbing the ones that did.
Okay.
So everybody has been able to have that opportunity.
That's great, that's great. But the people that see that sign-in sheet and don't want to fill it out may feel like they can't participate unless they do.
No, not sign in. If they want to speak, normally it's a piece of paper saying that they
Right.
want to speak. They don't sign in.
Like a public comment card.
Yeah, the public card.
Every board is different. Council has it in the rules of procedure.
Okay.
Comment card, but other boards do have sign-in sheets, but they don't have to sign.
So what is the card? What, did they put their name on it? They put what it is that they're trying to talk about?
It was brought about previously, to help, basically it was a tool also to help staff make sure that we're following up with everyone who has
Mhm.
questions.
That's great.
It's been modified. a
Yeah.
few times
No,
over
that's
the
great,
last
yeah.
But, yeah,
Okay.
I can see, some people don't want to speak.
Yeah.
They don't want to fill one out.
Right, right.
They have to.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
Liz does open it up afterwards. Anybody?
Yeah. I would just maybe recommend, where those cards are, put some sort of explanatory sheet saying, this is optional, this isn't required. If you would like us to follow up with you, you can fill one of these out. Just be a little more, forward about what it is and what it's about. And then you'll avoid those, situations where the public may feel, well, I didn't want to do that, so I don't get to talk. Even if they are invited later, they still may feel like a little, yeah.
Well, another thing with
Yeah.
the comment card is it's so that who's ever the chair or even the mayor knows, like, hey, this is so-and-so, and they wanted to speak, and so that they can come up to the podium and talk about whatever they were gonna
Right,
talk about.
right.
That's also why we have comment cards.
Yeah, so you can call on the individual people.
And
call
also,
them, yeah.
it's in order
Yeah.
of when they were received, so
Right.
like,
Right.
whoever, got them.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a benefit to it. There's definitely benefits to it. It lets you call people. It lets you, establish the order. Lets you follow up with people. Yeah,
Worked out pretty good.
yeah, and that's a good tool. We have a similar form by our door, and the mayor just says, you know, we're not allowed to talk with you, interact with you right now, but if you want us to follow up, you know, please fill out the form. So yeah, we're doing the same thing, you know, just going about it, you know, 2 different ways. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's good stuff. I wouldn't recommend doing it for public hearings specifically. Public hearings should just be
Oh, no.
And we don't.
you know, yeah,
So-
yeah, just let people come up. What else about the public? So do you guys have a deputy or an officer at your meetings regularly? Or just sometimes? Yeah, it depends on the topic. That's fine, as long as you're
Or
aware
they have a
that they
report.
can be needed. Yeah, especially, I mean, if you've got a public hearing scheduled on a data center, have somebody there. You
Yeah,
know,
mine-
it's gonna get wild. You know, just as long as your staff is on top of that, then you guys are fine. Our police chief tends to be at all of our meetings just because he's there half the time to give a report anyway, so he just shows up, you know, there. And we find that just having him there, sitting in the back of the room, we haven't had issues, you know, it's just sort of that presence, that authority presence keeps people, you know, behaving. You know, it does work, you know, it's kind of like, you know, the cop car that just sort of parks by the city limits, you know.
Doesn't have a person in it.
No, but nobody in it, but he's there, you know, so there is something to be said for that. But definitely if you don't have someone there, make sure somebody on staff has a direct dial to somebody that can be there quick. You know, if you do have an issue, because you don't want someone who's not a law enforcement officer dealing one-on-one with someone from the public. That's just a situation just begging for trouble. You know, if you have an unruly public comment or a public member, you know, wait for someone else to get there to deal with them. Don't try and do it yourself. It's just gonna turn out badly for everybody. You can't really kick someone out of your meeting unless they are actually causing a disturbance of the peace. So you need a law officer there to make that determination. You can't make that determination. So, you know, make sure you're handling that well. Hopefully you guys don't deal with that. It hasn't ever happened. I've never had to have somebody removed. But I mean, it's always there. It's always a possibility. You know, people get upset. You know, our most volatile meeting wasn't even a public hearing. It was just because our enforcement officer sent a letter to a home, and we don't allow livestock in our city. I don't know what your guys'
We got chickens.
standpoint is. Yeah, we don't allow anybody. No goats, no chickens, no ducks, no nothing. If it's not a dog or a cat, then it's not allowed. People have them in their homes. It's a complaint-based system. We're not patrolling, you know, so if your neighbor doesn't complain about your goats, then I don't care that you have goats. But if your neighbor complains about them, then we're gonna send you an enforcement letter. And so we sent an enforcement letter to a home that, you know, had some goats, and, you know, and then the next thing we know, we've got a 5-year-old girl and her 7-year-old brother crying at a city council meeting about their goats. And, you know, and that was, it was crazy. I'd never seen so many people at a meeting that wasn't a public hearing. It was crazy. Never, and we haven't had that kind of crowd since. You know, we adopt multi-million-dollar budgets every year. No one comes to those public hearings. You know, we have an ordinance about grass height, and we get 150 people.
Take
You
the
know,
cell
it's
phone
just-
away from your kid.
It's
Or parents
crazy,
are showing
yeah,
up in
it's
board
crazy what
meetings.
people are more concerned about than other things. I don't know, it's wild. So, it sounds like you guys have a good plan in place, that's great. You know, don't stop doing that. Keep on top of it. As far as the board members, you know, the chair always has that option to just call that recess and go on one with that board member, pull somebody else, have a staff member go with you, you know, deal with that. If it keeps continuing, just get through the meeting. Get through the meeting as best you can and then deal with it afterwards. If it's an appointed member, that's easy to deal with. You know, do you guys have, does the mayor appoint, or does the mayor recommend and the council appoints? Mayor recommends, council appoints. So it does take council action to remove that person. So that's a little bit trickier than it could be. But it's still a possibility. I mean, if staff comes to the mayor and with the chair of the board and says, look, this person is just, they're not good for this board. They're not participating, they're divisive, they're bitter, they're not a benefit to this board, they need to be removed. You know, if you guys are all on board for it, bring it up to council and see if they'll approve it. You know, I've only had to do it twice in the 30 years that I've been a clerk. It's not something that's fun to go through, but it is something that you may be faced sometimes. I had one member that kept violating the Open Meetings Act. He would not stop. He kept emailing the entire board about things that the board was talking about. And I would email him and say, look, you can't do that. You have to talk about things at the public meetings. You can't be emailing them and telling them what it is you think the board should do. And he wouldn't stop. And so I just went to the manager and the mayor and I was like, look, he's violating the OMA. We're gonna get called on this. We need to just remove him and eliminate that possibility. And so we did, you know, and he didn't talk to me for 20 years. But I mean, that is what it is. So elected people, well, now your hands are tied. They're elected. You know, there's not much you can do. You can try and send them to the MML academies on elected officials. You can try and talk to them with staff and the mayor. But when it comes down to it, they're elected to the board and they get to be on the board. So, you know, you just kind of get through it. 2-year terms or 4-year terms for your council? 4, yeah, so it could be a long 4-year slog. But hopefully they are dissatisfied enough that they don't run for re-election. You know, I have found typically if I have especially an elected member that just isn't happy and you can tell it's just not what they want, things that they want to have happen aren't happening, they're always argumentative, they're always dissatisfied, they typically don't run again because they see it as they're just beating their heads against the wall and it's not what they thought it was going to be. So usually the problem solves itself, but hopefully you guys don't run into that too much. All right, any questions on decorum and how to handle that? No? All right, what was the last item? Man, I'm not following this thing at all, am I? All right, but that's what happens. That's what happens. We start going back and forth. All right, so the majority rule. It's a simple concept. You know, if the majority of the board gets to decide what's happening. You know, we are not the Senate. We do not have a filibuster.
Oh, man.
You know, the minority cannot just talk and postpone that vote for as long as they can. It's not how we operate. If the talking has gone on long enough, the majority gets to say the talking stops now and the vote happens. And there's nothing the minority can do about it. That's just what it is. But the minority does have rights. They do have the right to speak. They do have the right to make motions, to make amendments, to, you know, if they don't like the motion that we're all talking about, they have a right to amend that motion to reflect what it is they want to have happen. And if they get a second, there's 2 people in the majority and they both want that to happen, okay, now that's what we're talking about. You know, but the majority can still vote that amendment down and get back to the original motion the way it was. So somebody makes a motion to amend your motion so that we're only spending $3,000 instead of $5,000. Somebody seconds it, okay, now we're talking about the 3 and the 5. That amendment gets voted down, they don't get to bring it up again.
Right.
They don't get to say, you know, okay, well, I move that we amend it from 5,000 to 3,100. You know, you can put your gavel down and say that motion's out of order. We have already addressed the monetary amount. It is set at 5,000. They don't get to just keep bringing it up over and over and over and delaying that vote because they really don't want to vote on it. You know, you dealt with that. So they can make amendments. They can do that, but they can't make amendment after amendment after amendment after amendment to just try and postpone it. You can call them out on that. If it's only one person, that's easy because now they make their motion. There's no second, and it doesn't happen. We don't have to talk about it. So you could just kind of move on. This can be a little more difficult to deal with at the council level and the ZBA level because they are a little bit more of a formal board. So there's a little bit more rigidity to the process. It's not so casual. There's not so much back and forth. So it can happen more frequently in those boards that a minority member sort of tries to delay things or take control, but it's not an insurmountable thing. You just sort of go through it and let the minority have their say, and then you vote on it, and what the majority says happens, and that's it. And they can't bring it up later because they didn't vote in the majority, so they've had their chance. They also can't be limited in their debate more so than your rules allow. So if your rules say everybody gets to talk twice, well then everybody gets to talk twice, even if they're speaking in opposition to the motion. If there is no limit, then the majority has the right to say, call the question, we've been talking enough, we need to vote on this. I've seen some cities limit debate effectively, and I've seen other cities try to limit debate ineffectively. So it's a little risky to put it in your rules that the board's debate is limited. It's really hard to enforce because you sort of tie your own hands, and you find situations where you wish you hadn't, where you wish you could go longer, because it is a more robust debate and you want to talk about it, but you've limited yourself and you can't. So I recommend that you err on the side of conservatism and just let people talk. Don't limit it, and let the board decide whether it's gone on too long in each instance, rather than have a rule that says everybody only gets to talk twice, or everybody only gets to talk for 5 minutes, or let it be open and let the board decide when things have gone too long, because some things take more time and some things don't. So you want to give the board as much opportunity as you can. There isn't necessarily a rule for you've already talked. You do want to let everyone talk before you let someone talk again, but if as the chair you've opened debate and a couple of people have talked and things are quieted down, and you put it again, you say, is there anything else? And the only person that puts up their hand is someone who's already talked, well then you let them talk again, because no one else is trying to. So at that point you're not really limiting anyone else. No one else has indicated that they want to. So that's another opportunity where Roberts doesn't really apply to us, because we don't have that structured multi-hundred people environment. So very likely someone will talk 2 or 3 times before someone else does, because that other person just hasn't had the opportunity to percolate yet and get in their head what it is they want to say. Or maybe it's the second round before someone says something that sparks something in them that they want to say. So keep it open, keep asking people for that debate. Don't call for the vote as the chair until you've called for debate and no one has responded. Okay, now we're done. Let's call for the vote. Don't call that vote before you've run out of the opportunities, because you don't want to make your members feel like they weren't given the opportunity to talk, or you cut them short. So it's always a balancing act for the chair. They don't want the meeting to go on too long, but you also don't want to cut things too short. So it's kind of a dance for the chairs. You got to give them a little grace when it comes to that, especially new ones, because they don't always have the skills that they need. Let's see, what else about majority rule? There's not, let's talk about the directing staff as well. It's not just debate. So as I said before, with the equality, everyone on that board is there with the same responsibilities and authority. So that means no individual member of that board has authority outside of that board. You only have authority when you're at that meeting, in sitting as a member of the board. Once you leave that meeting, you're just John and Jane Q. Public. You're nobody. Just because you happen to sit on the council doesn't mean that you can call City Hall and direct staff to spend time and energy and money on something you want done. The council can direct staff to spend city time and energy and money, but individual members don't have that authority unless the council has given them that authority to do so. So, and that is true for all of your staff, like the planning commission, individual planning commission members can't direct a city planner unless the planning commission as a whole has said, we designate Commissioner Smith to interact with the planner on this project and represent the commission, then they can. But outside of that, you know, the individual members shouldn't feel like they have that authority to individually direct staff and, you know, spend city money, because they don't have that authority. You know, they wouldn't be able to sign a contract on behalf of the city just on their own. So they also can't direct, you know, city staff to spend time and money on their own. So a lot of city managers will sort of create a culture where the council and the board chairs will communicate with them, and then the manager will then go to the staff and say, hey, the mayor emailed me on this, you know, can you take care of this for me? It'll, you know, 5-10 minute project, and then we'll get back to them. You know, let the manager, let the, you know, some single person be that funnel, so that the individual staff members don't feel that pressure from the board that they may not have the fortitude to deal with. You know, that's not what they were hired to do. You know, your city hall secretary shouldn't be interacting with the mayor one-on-one. You know, that's not what you hired them to do. So something to keep in mind as board members. You have all the authority that you need when you're at that meeting, but when you're outside of a meeting, you don't have anything. You know, that's just how it is. That's democracy. So, is there anything else on majority rule? Yes. Okay. Committees. Do you guys have committees on your council or on your other boards? Like standing committees that are always there? No. Okay. Great. Good. Committees are problematic because if you have, let's say you have a finance committee, you know, it's a 3-member committee, so it's not a quorum of the council. They're not violating OMA. They're not meeting as council. So it's just 3 members. They're going to sit down and they're going to talk with the manager and the treasurer about the budget, and they're going to kind of figure out the budget. They're spending time and energy working on that. Excuse me. And then they're still going to have to take all that to the council as a whole and go through it all again. So it's not like you can push that off on a committee and give that committee the authority to act on behalf of council. Now you're violating the OMA. So having those standing committees, it can be effective in a very limited capacity, but you wanna be careful that you're not giving those committees authority to enact or adopt public policy, because that's when you're gonna run into OMA issues. It can be useful, you know, to have like an HR committee where the manager and staff can meet with just a few of you to talk about, you know, the upcoming, you know, negotiations, because, you know, that's not gonna come to the board until the end. You know, you guys aren't gonna really get involved in the nitty-gritty of that. So there are some uses for it, but it can be problematic. Did you have a question?
We have a Simon Group committee and a liquor license committee.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the kind of that's the kind of uses that are really effective for those specific things. Like you need some input, but you're not setting public policy in that committee. You're just reviewing things and, you know, dispensing information, as it were.
Not spending money.
Yeah. So that's good. You can always do, you know, ad hoc committees. You know, any board can do that. Any board can say, look, this is a big issue. We're going to be talking about this for a little while. Can I get 3 volunteers to spend some time on this, do some research, make some calls, and come back to us with information so that when we talk about this, we're more informed. You know, that's a great use of it. But again, they're not doing public policy. They're just doing research. They're just bringing information back to you. You know, it's a great way to use a committee where the whole board doesn't have to spend time doing that. And by the time it gets back to the board, it's just information, and now they're prepared to talk about it. especially if you don't have enough staff to do it. You know, for so small towns like us, you know, we don't have interns and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's nice when a board kind of steps up and says, yeah, we'll take on that research, we'll do that. You know, that can be very helpful. So that's a great use of committees. Just be careful, you know, don't overuse them, and certainly don't give them authority to do anything with public policy or finances, because then you can run into real issues. All right, any questions on the majority rule aspect of it? We're gonna kind of move into something that may not apply to all of you, but it's still good information for you. This is more for the secretaries and for the clerks, as far as like creating the agendas and the minutes. So you are gonna see the effects of all this stuff, but you aren't necessarily gonna be involved in the nitty gritty of it. But I still want you guys to hear this, especially the chairs and the secretaries that are here. So when you're putting together your agenda, does the mayor get involved in that, or is that strictly staff? Okay, what about the other boards? Does like the planning commission chair get involved in that, or is it just the planner that puts that together? Just the planner? Okay, that's fine. That's a perfectly acceptable way to do it. I've seen both ways. The chair has that role. You know, the chair can get involved in that process of developing the agenda. That's certainly within their purview, but it's not required, especially when you have dedicated staff like a planner or a manager. You know, that's really more what they're there for. So staff puts together that agenda, they put together the information behind it, the reports, all that kind of stuff, and they're the ones that are really coming up with that motion language, you know, the recommended language for you that's on that agenda. So one of the benefits of putting that on the agenda, again, is that transparency. The public can read that agenda and they know, oh, they're gonna make a decision on this. It's not listed on the agenda just as site plan. It's listed on the agenda as motion to, or action to, or however you want to word it, but like approval of site plan. And then the public knows, like, oh, this is the one I want to go to. This is the meeting where I need to be there, because they're actually going to take action on this. They're not just talking about it anymore. So yeah.
So actually, I had a couple residents, we did that for a couple agenda items, I think it was like back around the summer for some bid selection.
Yeah.
And it actually confused a couple residents, because they thought like it was already decided, like it was already, you have like a
Yep.
recommendation.
Yeah. That's one of the things that can come out of it. Sometimes the public will see that agenda item because it says approval of bid, approval of site plan. They think to themselves, well, why are we having a meeting? It's already been decided, you know? So hopefully they'll voice that. They'll come to staff, or they'll ask the chair, like, hey, why is this on there that way? And then you can explain to them, well, it's on there that way because we want to see a positive action on that agenda. We want it to be a motion to approve, a motion to award. We don't want it to be open-ended where people don't know what's happening. It's not that it's already happened, it's that we're trying to convey what it is that we're going to be doing. We're going to be approving an award. Now, you can sort of fight that by the agenda not being too specific. Instead of saying action to award a bid to Sally's Mowing for mowing the park, it can just be motion to award the mowing bid for the parks. And then people don't make that assumption of, oh, the decision's already been made, they're giving it to Sally. They read the agenda and it just tells them, oh, they're awarding the bid tonight. That's gonna happen. You know, and then at the meeting, the mayor can say, you know, do I have a motion to award the bid to Sally? You know, the staff recommendation is this, can I have a motion to do that staff recommendation? So you can sort of kind of have your cake and eat it too, you know, have it both ways. We do it more specific on our agendas. We're as specific as we can. I haven't run into that from the public yet. Maybe it's that people just aren't calling me. I don't know, but it's been working for us. So you know, that's what we do. We'll talk about motions just for a quick second. The language of your motion should be as inclusive as you can, to the point where if you took that paragraph or sentence of motion out of the minutes, and only had that with no context from the minutes at all, it would still make sense. And you would know exactly what it means and what happened. So the motion should be specific about who's the award to, how much money, for what, for what term, for the next year, for the next 24 months, whatever it is. People shouldn't have to see a motion that just says, motion to award the mowing bid for the parks, and then have to look above that in the motions to see, how long was that, for what money, and to who. The motion should contain all that. It should stand on its own. So that's information for both the secretary for the minutes and for the chair, so they're at the meeting, they know, to be as specific as you can with those motions. It has multiple benefits. It lets the public know exactly what's going on. It lets the board members know exactly what it is they're voting on and what they're talking about. It lets the clerk and the secretary know exactly what it is to put in the minutes and record what happened. So you want those minutes to be as solely comprehensive as you can and stand on their own. Yeah.
Real quick, normally what we do, let's say a garbage company, and we awarded, but you'll see everyone that bid.
Yep.
And what their price is. I
Right.
think that's really important. that
Yeah,
the
you
public
should always have a bid
sees.
tab in there. Yeah, everybody should be able to see everything.
Yeah.
Yep, and then at the end of that bid tab should be
Yeah,
the staff
understand.
recommendation of, who was the low one, and if it wasn't the low one, why are we recommending the second to lowest? What is it about the lowest that we don't like and we're not gonna go with? Maybe we had them last year and they sucked, and we're not gonna do it again. So, whatever the reason is. We've had, we've had a low bidder for our mowing, for our cemetery, and they were awful. We had to, so again, they were the low bidder the next year, and we were like, no, we spent enough money repairing tombstones, we're done with you. We'll go with somebody else. But when you have those legitimate reasons, you can do that. You don't have to go with the low bidder, so make sure your motions are good that way. And so when you get a motion that is super complex, that's when you want to switch from a motion to a resolution. If you can't get a 2 or 3 lines of a motion that's comprehensive enough, if it gets beyond that, okay, you're out of motion territory, now you're into a resolution. Because you need some multiple paragraphs, you need explanation, you need, all those details, and that just can't be in motion language. So in that instance, the motion language would just be motion to adopt resolution number 3 of 2026 to award a bid for mowing. And then they would go to that resolution for all the details, because there's just too many details to put in the motion. So that's the difference between a motion and a resolution. You need a resolution when it just gets too complex for the motion to have all those details in it. So you just shift over to a resolution. Typically, you're gonna use a resolution for contracts, for bid awards, things that are just, they got money involved, they got time frames involved, they got contractor names, they've got, multiple parks involved, all that kind of stuff, and it's just too much to put in the language of a 2 or 3 lines of a motion. So that's when you want to do that transition.
Can a resolution then include a reference to a third document, a contract?
Absolutely, yep, resolution should always have that little caveat at the end that says, as attached. And then the bid tabulation is attached, the contract is attached, even the RFP that you put out, that's attached, all becomes that one project document that has, everything in it. The secondary sort of, side benefit of that for us clerks is when we get a FOIA, all we gotta do is just give them the packet and they got everything they need. We don't have to search for, multiple different things. So there's a benefit to using those resolutions for us too. It makes our lives a little easier. So let's talk about minutes for a little bit, beyond the agenda. So the minutes are called minutes because they're a record of what happens every few minutes. If they were a record of everything that was said, they'd be called seconds. So they're not a transcript of the meeting. They are a record of what was done, not what was said. they can include what was said as explanatory of what was done, especially for the ZBA. But they are first and foremost a record of actions taken. When was the meeting? Where was the meeting? Who was there? And what happened? That's the core of the minutes, those 4 items. Where it was, when it was, who was there, and what happened. Beyond that is all just extra. You can put in explanations of what was talked about. You can put in, an explanation of a staff report if you want. You can put in the names of the people who commented in the public comment, but none of that is required. That's all extra. Public hearings are a little different. You definitely want to put in, public hearing information, but general public comment, all you have to say is the public commented. And that shows in your minutes that you complied with the Open Meetings Act and you allowed public comment. A lot of people don't like being that concise because the public wants the record to show what it was they talked about. The risk is, are you accurately recording what it is they talked about? Or are they gonna come back at you and say, that's not what I said? So if you're gonna record public comment, you wanna be as general as you can. If they say their name, Sally Jones commented about the Meadowwoods development. Not that they were in support, not that they were opposed, just they commented on the development. And then they can't come back and tell you that you recorded it wrong, because they did comment on the development. They can't argue that. They can argue that you spelled their name wrong, but that's about it. So a lot of municipalities will just keep it that concise. They'll just say the public commented, just to show that they comply with the Open Meetings Act. Some will get real specific, names, addresses. They spoke about this and this and this and this and this, and then every variable in between of that. Our council currently, if people say their name and address, they like to see that in the minutes. Fine, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I do push back on if they want more detail than just commented about X. I keep it at that, and any little pushback I get from the council, I push right back at them and say, I can put more detail in, but that means the public can come back at you and say, that's not what I said. And once I say that, then they're like, oh, okay, nope, that's fine. Keep it simple. It's like, yep, that's the best way to do it. For public hearings, you do want to be a little more specific. You do want to put in as much names and addresses as you can. If people say it, you want to put in, if you can clearly get that they were in opposition or in support, put that down, because that's, especially with grants, that's what the state's looking for. Who was opposing it, who was supporting it, and how many of them were there. So especially for grants, you want to do that. But beyond public hearings, be as vague as you can with public comment. For board comments, again, my recommendation and my practice is the only time the names of board members are in the minutes are when they make a motion or a second. During the debate, I don't put individual names. I just say the board debated, and then what it is they debated. They debated the price, they debated the term length, they debated the renewal language, whatever it is. But I don't say, Councilmember Smith had a problem with this, and Councilmember Jones asked about this. It's like, no, that's, because again, what if I get it wrong? I'm not a transcriptionist. I don't get down every word and every nuance that was said. I will do a little bit of a humble brag. I have not had an amendment to my minutes in 25 years.
Yeah.
Because I don't put in those kind of details. So there isn't anything to correct, because I didn't get anything wrong. Now, that's not to say that my minutes aren't comprehensive. They do show what was talked about and what was acted on and what happened. So the public can read them and see, oh yeah, they did talk about the term length of that contract. They were talking about that. It doesn't necessarily say who, but it does say that they talked about it. So it is explanatory. It does say why they did things and how they did things, but but it doesn't go into detail about individual member comments. And we've been very successful with it. So having said all that, the ZBA does need a little bit more detail because they are more of a tribunal than a board. It's more of a hearing. They're going through contingencies, they're going through, does the applicant meet these requirements? Are they doing what they have to do to get a yes, or is it gonna be a no? And you need to record all those details so that later on, if someone goes back and looks at it and says, well, you made the wrong decision, I'm suing you, you've got those minutes to back you up to say, no, we went through it, you didn't meet number 1, you met number 2, and you didn't meet number 3. So they do need a little bit more detail in the ZBA minutes especially. Planning Commission can sometimes require a little more detail, especially with site plans, because there's a lot of contingencies with those. There's engineering reports that you gotta refer to. So there are some situations where you need more detail. But generally speaking, the minutes should just be, the general discussion of the topic, explaining, what happened, not necessarily what everyone individually said. What else about minutes? It can be cantankerous when you get down to the board member comments, because the board, sometimes you'll have a member that really wants to talk about something, and how detailed do you get? As the secretary and as the clerk, don't feel inhibited to call that person and say, hey, I want to accurately reflect what it is you said during the meeting. What was it that you were trying to say? Were you trying to say that you were in support of this? I want to record that accurately. You can do that with your board members, especially for that section of the minutes, because you are reflecting individual member comments at that. Or maybe your culture is just to not record the comments at all in the minutes. It's just on the agenda, but you don't actually put in what people said. That's fine too, because again, there's not a requirement to do it. The OMA doesn't say that the board members are supposed to have an opportunity to talk. It only says that the public has to have an opportunity to talk. So you don't have to put it in the minutes. Whatever your practice and your culture is fine. Our mayor, pretty much every meeting, just sort of runs through the list of all the community events that are happening between that meeting and the next. So it's like, I said, dude, I'm not gonna put all that in there. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say the mayor reviewed the upcoming community events. That's it, because no one's looking at the minutes for that. No one's saying, what's happening this week in town? I know where I'll look for that information. I'll go to the city council minutes. I'm sure it'll be in there. No, it's fine for him to do it. It's great because we are live. We're on Zoom, we're on YouTube. People are watching the meeting. So it's fine that he does it, but I'm just not gonna put it in the minutes. It's not, it's not germane to the minutes.
So real quick, with your televise,
Yes,
live?
yes, live, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you televise all your boards, like their planning,
Yes,
ZBA?
yep. All of our meetings are live, yep.
Okay.
The council's the only one that we put on the website after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody wants to see a planning commission meeting, they gotta watch it when it happens. They can ask me for the video and I'll give it to them later,
Right.
but I'm not
But
gonna
it doesn't-
proactively put it out there.
So it doesn't go on like a YouTube?
Right, only the council does.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and even those are only the 2 most recent ones.
Okay.
Yeah, we just rotate them out because once the minutes are approved, that's the official record of the meeting.
Okay.
The video is not the official record of the meeting, so why are you keeping it?
Yeah.
It's not a benefit.
And this is what we
Yeah.
have right now. So
Yeah, well, yeah,
we got 2 people doing it.
Really?
We should be having,
Yeah.
that's our goal is to
Okay.
get everything.
yeah, that's great.
I've done hundreds of videos for YouTube.
Yeah,
so.
just you don't need to keep them. It's not the official record.
Right.
Now, having said that, things are changing. We are living in a video world now. People expect video to be available. You see something happen in the world, the first thing people think of is, well, where's the CCTV video of that? Somebody must have had a camera around there. Where's the video of that? We expect that there's a video of everything that happens. So I anticipate that maybe the OMA may not change, but there will definitely be a culture shift in the records management world where videos are expected to be kept longer. But right now, they're not, so we're not. When that changes, then we'll change. But for now, we're not doing it. Yeah. Let's see, what else about minutes? The minutes need to be available, so the Open Meetings Act requires that draft minutes are available within 8 days. So during those 8 days, if you receive a FOIA, you don't have to respond to it. The minutes don't exist. So it's not a wait for it, it's a the record doesn't exist. On the 8th day, that's when the record exists. It gives you those 8 days to develop those minutes and create them and change them and get them into their final form. And then on that 8th day, now you've got some draft minutes. They have to be publicly available, and that's their final form. You can't change them between that 8th day and the day they're approved. Those are the draft minutes at that point. The OMA requires that the approved minutes be available within 5 business days. So you've got those 5 days to get those minutes signed and get them out there. If you get it done within 1 day, great. Do it as quick as you can. But you do have 5 days to do it. Now those are business days. So it's Monday through Friday. It doesn't matter what your regular hours are. I've had townships, well, we're only open on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You still have a 5 business day week. You don't get to cheat and only have a 2 business day week. It's Monday through Friday. Now, if you have an adopted holiday schedule, take those into account. Obviously Christmas is not a business day, so you can take those into account, but they have to be your holidays, not just, well, I know that's a holiday, so I'm counting that. If your employees are working, it's not a holiday. So you do have to account for those. And so the reason I say the draft minutes don't exist yet is because for FOIA purposes, for public records purposes, we are not required to release documents that are in process. If someone submits a FOIA and says, I want a record of the staff report that you're gonna be giving to council on Monday. Well, I'm still working on that. I'm not done with it yet. I haven't even given it to the manager yet. I'm certainly not gonna give it to you. That record doesn't exist. I'm working on it. So that's why the draft minutes are considered not that 8-day time frame. You have those 8 days to get with the chair, get with your recording secretary, figure out what the minutes look like, make sure you've got it all down before you have to release them. It gives you time to put that together.
How long do you have to hold them?
Permanent.
Okay.
Minutes are permanent records. They cannot be destroyed ever. I have minutes from 1873 in my office. They are permanent records. Yeah.
We have that all too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I was
probably
gonna-
do.
yeah.
You can't read them because it's like, George Washington script where the F's look like S's, they're illegible. Even those of us who learned cursive can't read them, much less kids nowadays. My middle son, they all still learned cursive in the 5th grade, but they don't use it. My middle son was so bad at cursive, he could not figure it out. His signature, he hated cursive and he didn't want to use it. So his signature is Elvish from Lord of the Rings. That he figured out how to sign his name in Elvish and that's his signature.
Whatever it is.
Great, because it looks like cursive anyway, so it doesn't matter. Those old minutes, those are permanent.
So
Yeah,
that's what takes so long for people to get a FOIA,
Yeah.
so they have to bring it into paper.
Right, yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
everything is everything now is like micro,
Yeah, well, it's all digital records now. Yeah, I haven't had physical paper minutes since COVID. Yeah, so COVID kind of forced the records management world to go digital, even for those of us that were sort of hesitant to do it. Everything's signed digitally now. My minutes never exist in physical form. They are created digitally. They're signed digitally. They're stored digitally. It's all.
can't be lost.
Yeah, my minutes book's in my safe. You get to the one that includes 2020, and it just stops in March, and it's just blank after that. It's all digital after that. Same with my resolutions. It's all digital. So you print one off whenever you want it.
Well, I used to work in an archive, so I prefer both.
Yeah, but both is great. But I have a 6-drawer filing cabinet in my office. It's empty now because I was rotating things out of it, and I got to the point where I wasn't rotating things in, and now it's empty, and I don't know what to do with it. So, which is a great thing, because it's so much easier to provide information to the public. You just email it to them. You don't have to mail it, they don't have to come get it. Also permanent records are the packets that are prepared for your meetings. Those are permanent, those are never destroyed. So the agendas and all the staff reports and all that kind of stuff, those are permanent as well. The closed session, when you go into a closed session, those minutes are handled a little differently. You don't have to go into another closed session to approve closed session minutes. That would just be an endless loop. You can approve closed session minutes in an open meeting. You just don't put them in the packet. You just hand them out to the individual members at the meeting. They read them, you get them all back from them, they approve them, and then you destroy those copies and just keep the one for just a year, and then you destroy that one too. So the closed session minutes are not permanent. They are a transitory record. Yeah, so that's just a little aside for the secretaries. Yeah, so when you guys are putting together your agendas, you're putting together your minutes, feel free to talk to the chairs, the individual members. You have a question on something that somebody said, give them a call, send them an email, and say, you want to make sure those minutes are accurate. The worst thing you can do is give minutes to the board for approval, and then they're just changing things left and right, and the public looks at that and they're like, what is happening? They're changing what they did. They're looking at their minutes from the last meeting, and they're changing what happened. You don't want that to happen. You want the minutes to be just approved. Like, yep, that's what we did. That's what we did. So definitely work on them beforehand. Get them a good final copy. Any questions on minutes? No.
No, he just likes that. Pick on me.
Yeah, the minutes can be sticky, especially, when I first came on, our planning commission minutes were 20, 30 pages long. It was crazy, and I worked with our planner for a year and a half and the chair, trying to get them, down and down and down. And the individual commissioners didn't like it. They liked that record of everything they talked about, and they wanted it recorded and all their stuff. And it took a while. It took a while to change that culture, and it can. So give the secretaries a little grace if they're trying to fine tune things, and let them do the best they can. The ZBA, like I said, is a little bit different. They do need a little more detail, because that's kind of a different animal for them. But everyone else should be pretty minimal. Even a 4-hour council meeting, I can get down to 3 pages a minute. It's really shouldn't be much. Yeah.
What happens if someone violates that? Is it a fine?
Oh, yeah, so, yeah, the OMA, there's no OMA police. The Open Meetings Act, it's sort of self-regulated. An individual member or a member of the public, might call the Attorney General and say, hey, I think our board met in violation of the OMA. Or they can say, here's proof of the 5 FOIAs that I submitted, and I haven't gotten my minutes yet, and it's been 6 months. And our current Attorney General, she will assign someone to that. She is an OMA hawk.
But it's like by mistake.
Yeah, and most often it is. Most often that's what happens. The Attorney General's office will call the clerk, and they'll say, hey, we've received a report from someone that they asked for minutes from you, and they don't have them. What's going on? And the clerk will say, I gave them to them, I emailed, the email keeps bouncing back, something's going on, we don't know what, and usually it's taken care of. More often than not, an OMA violation that makes the news is because there's a misunderstanding between the public and the OMA. The public thinks something should have happened a certain way, thinks it didn't, and calls the press. And the press doesn't know any different, and so they report it, and then that's what happened. Regardless of whether that's what happened, that's what happened. So.
I am the press.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it happens. But most reported OMA violations aren't. Most of it's just misunderstanding. They don't realize that we can hold a meeting the next day if we need to. It's an 18-hour notice. It's not even 24. So, you know, we could hold a meeting the same day if it, you know, if it came down to it, you know, but, yeah, so a lot of the public things the OMA requires, you know, 5 days of notice and, you know, all that stuff that it just doesn't. Yeah.
I just didn't wanna make a mistake. and
Yeah.
then-
Yeah. No, for the recording people, really the ones that you need to pay attention to are the 5 days for the approved and the 8 days for the draft. If you're meeting those two, you're fine. Yeah. Do you guys put your minutes on your website? When they're approved? Yep. Okay, that's fine. Yep. Just don't miss that deadline. Once you start, you gotta keep doing it. That is something in the OMA. It says that they must be uploaded to the website if the municipality has a page dedicated to minutes. So if you don't, then you don't have to do it. But once you do, you gotta do it every time. Yeah, so you're sort of requiring it of yourself once you start. Yeah. You can
Take it down now.
yeah, nope, sorry, too late. If you want, you can put your draft ones out there too. I do, you know, on the 8th day, I put my draft ones out there because we only meet every 2 weeks. So, you know, I'll put my draft ones out there for the time in between that 8th day and the next meeting, just to let people know, you know, what happened. But then I replace them with the approved ones, you know, as soon as I possibly can. And don't let the draft ones sit out there too long. Do you put your packets on your website as well? Good, that's great. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, yeah. Do you still do printed packets for everybody?
I don't know.
No.
Do you?
No?
Only
By request.
If we
By request? Nice.
We all
Yeah.
have computers.
Yeah, yeah, not all of us are that lucky. I'm still printing a lot of packets.
Some people still like paper too.
Yeah, that's fine. We're sort of in a transitional world right now. You know, it's some of it's digital, some of it's physical. It just depends on what we feel like in the moment.
Mhm.
You know, my wife loves crosswords, but she hates them on digital. She wants them on paper.
Mhm.
You know, that's just how it is. So some people love reading digital books. Some people hate reading digital books. You know. All right. Any other questions on minutes and agendas? I kind of covered those just for your guys' benefit, but yeah. Okay. Any other questions in general about anything that we talked about? If you think of something later on, email me. I will respond and answer them. I don't have a problem with that at all. I can give you a sample of the agenda that I give the mayor. I can send you, what else was I doing? I think that might have been it. Yeah. Yeah, you guys already have the concern form. That was the other thing I was thinking of. Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for letting me come.
Thank you.
I love doing this, so.